Welcome and thank you for attending this meeting of the Finance and Performance Policy Committee. My name is Zahira Naz. I am a councillor for the Darnell Ward and Chair of the Finance Committee. The meeting today is open to the public. The meeting will be webcast and recording will be also available for people to view later through the Council's website. It is also possible that Sheffield Live TV will record and broadcast this meeting. Please can I request that mobile telephones and other such equipment are switched to silent mode as not to disturb the conduct of this meeting. There is no fire test planned for today. If there is an emergency evacuation, please take instructions from the Town Hall staff. The assembly point is Tudor Square. Please also note Appendix 4, Item 9 is not available to the public and press because it contains exempt information as described in paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. If members wish to discuss the information, we will need to ask the members of the public and press to kindly leave that part of the meeting and we will halt the webcast. For the benefit of the webcast, please can each Finance and Performance Policy Committee member introduce themselves, and I will start with Mary.
Councillor Mary Lee, Darnell Ward, and I'm substituting for Councillor Gareth Slater today.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Councillor Eldard from Manor Castle.
Good afternoon, Councillor Abdul Qayyum, Firth Park. Councillor Andrew Sanger, Forward Ward, substituting for Councillor Shafak Mohammed.
Councillor Mike Levery, West Ecclesfield Ward, and Vice Chair of the Committee.
Councillor Dennis Chapman from Mosborough Ward.
Hello, my name is Diane Hurst. I'm an elected member for Richmond Ward and I'm a substitute member of this committee.
Thank you very much. Is there any items for, any apologies for absence, Fiona?
Yes, we have a number of apologies for today's meeting. Councillors Terry Fox, Shafak Mohammed, Gareth Slater and Martin Phipps all send their apologies.
Item 2, exclusions of public and press. As I said previously, Appendix 4, Item 9 is not contains exempt information. If any members do want to ask any questions in regarding to Appendix 4, then we will ask members of the public to leave and we'll halt the webcast. Item 3, declarations of interest. Is there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. This is on page 11 of the agenda pack. Councillor Dodd.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask a clarification question in the minutes point 88.1, oh no, 88.2, sorry, there seems to be, I couldn't quite work out, I wasn't sure what the link between the Council's constitution and the ethical procurement policy was, and I think that sounds like there might have been two conversations that we're conflating into one point in the minutes. So if we could just get that clarified, that would be helpful.
Thank you very much, and that's been noted. Any other? No? Okay, so that's fine. Item number 5, which is public questions and petitions. We haven't received no public questions, petitions or statements on this occasion. Item 6, members' questions. We have no member questions for today's meeting. Item 7, work programme, and this is on page 21 of the agenda pack. And the presenting officer is Fiona Martinez.
Hi, good afternoon everybody. As Zahira said, at page 21 of your pack there is this month's work programme for the Finance and Performance Policy Committee. As you will see on item 4, which is proposed additions and amendments to the work programme since our last meeting, we've had one amended item, no new items. The amended item is Sheffield City Council's ethical procurement policy, which has now been scheduled for April's committee meeting. As always, I invite members to suggest any items that they think should be added to our work programme, and we will be looking ahead now to 25-26 as we approach the beginning of the new municipal year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Councillor Dodd.
Thanks, and thanks, Fiona. Can I just, conscious that this ethical procurement policy has been put back a few times now, and we've had a conversation about the consultation and member engagement that will be needed before we're in a position to bring it to this committee. Can I just get a sense of what the timeline leading up to the formal production of the papers is going to be for that, and what plans are underway for consultation?
Great, thank you. So what we'll do is we are looking at putting some member working groups in place where we can share the policy with members, get their views before we bring it formally to committee. Just looking at dates for those. We'll be coming to you hopefully this week with some dates to suggest for those member working groups before we then formalise the paper that comes to committee. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps on the member side. Just wondering whether there's any other consultation. There was mention in the work plan to consultation with other external groups. I'm just wondering, feels like quite a tight timeline to make it for April, and I'm wondering how realistic that is, given that members haven't been involved at all yet.
I think that is realistic, but we'll review that and come back to you if that's going to be a problem.
I think dates will come out today or this week regarding member working group, and then we'll review depending on where we get to in terms of consultation, because we want to make sure that we are consulting on this and members also have an input when we're putting this together. Okay, is there any other questions or comments? No, this report does contain recommendations for approval. Are we all agreed? Thank you, that's all agreed. So now we're going to item number 8, which is a council plan outcomes framework. And this is on page 31 of the agenda pack, and the presenting officer is James Ford.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. So, presenting today the Outcomes Framework Q3 report. This is the third report to this committee. Just as a contextualise it, the Outcomes Framework are the measures that we use to show progress against our council plan. The idea that they're linked directly to the spirit and intent of each priority within the plan. Following the established pattern that we've had in presenting back at previous committees, I'm going to focus today on Appendix 1, which is the strengths and challenges document where we summarise the key strengths and challenges from data that's changed this quarter. There is the full pack presented. I'll be able to take questions on that if there's any further, answer them the best I can. Given that it's quite a broad range of measures, there may be some questions that I do need to take away and come back to committee with. The only additional piece in the Form 2 this time that differs from standard reporting is just to note recommendation 4, where given that we're at Q3 now for 24-25, we want to, we've intended always to review this framework annually. That will be coming up within the next 2 quarters. With the early engagement that we've had through the member working groups, there's been a strong theme coming out around equality-based measures and recognising we've got the Council's equality framework as well. So it's a recommendation in there from Q1 next year that we start to incorporate the Council's equalities measures and report through this group as appendices to this report, and also clears the way really to integrate equalities reporting across some of the existing measures. I think some of those that you'll hear today have an equalities lens and perspective that, from hearing from members in the working group, we want to bring that to it, in particular things like school attendance, school attainment, have various protected characteristics that we may want to look at. So nothing specific today, but just to clear the way for that with their recommendation. So I'll go on now to go through the strengths and challenges document. I will take this an outcome at a time. I'm going to start with outcome 1, a place where all children belong and all young people can build a successful future. The main development this time in the education sphere, since we last met, is the release of the results, the percentage of Key Stage 4 pupils achieving +4 in English and Maths. Essentially, that's our GCSE results, C and above. I'm pleased to say it's a small increase, but we've improved slightly, 0.1% on last year. It should be noted as well that we've actually increased 2% on English and Maths 5+, which is slightly higher. We've chosen the 4+ for the outcomes framework because that's the broadest measure that will allow the most number of pupils to enter at the next stage of their academic career. The 5+ focus on entry requirements for kind of A-levels around science, English and higher level academic subjects. The hope is that this is a continued improvement. Some of the building blocks are in place for that. We continue at directorate level to see measures related to this around schools rated good or outstanding, continuing to show 3-year improvement. And what I'll come on to shortly in terms of a strength, we've seen a bit of a turnaround in attendance, and there's a key correlation with school attendance and with attainment. Comparatively, and for this measure, building on feedback from members last time, we've tried to show where we sit comparatively between the core cities. So we're right in the middle, right at the midpoint at this time, and hopefully we'll move up that pack in the next year. Just to note the next piece in education, we're still yet to get an update from Department of Education on those who are in sustained education, apprenticeships and employment destinations following Key Stage 4. Was expected in February. We now expect this, I imagine, now in Q4. Again, that's a key measure really for us, showing that our education system is working and citizens are moving on to have a strong economic position going forward in the city's labour market. So an emerging strength then is our total persistent absence, that being those pupils missing 10% or more of their possible sessions. This is quite a measure that has quite a lot of lag, because to calculate a yearly average, the DFE has to validate quite a large amount of data. But where we were at autumn term 23-24 is that we actually met our all schools target. So across the 3 phases, primary, secondary, special school, we were at 21%, and we'd set ourselves a target based on comparators, which was quite ambitious at the time. We set it over a year ago, 22%. The signs that you see now going into the early half term, at the first half term of this academic year, is showing a decreased rate of absence, which is good news. One thing I will say is it's not fully yet embedded, and we still will have the bad weather and snow that we had a few months ago to potentially build into this, but it's a good news story really in terms of trajectory turnaround. In terms of challenges in this area, I'm going to focus on the performance of our newly made education, health and care plans, issued or completed within 20 weeks. This is a national pressure that's felt by a number of other authorities right across the country, but in recent months we have fell below the target levels that we've set for us, with significantly poor performance of 9.8% in December of last year. Latest comparator data put us around 48%, but that's based on the year 22 to 23. If we continue as we are, we'd like to come out around 35% next year. What's clear from what Service have added to the Strengths and Challenges document is that this level of performance can't continue, and they've put in that document, which I won't go through in absolute detail, an 8-week action plan to try and turn this around. It's based on a number of factors around capacity, around the availability of educational psychologists and the difficulty in recruiting them. But they have put in some process and system changes that they're hoping are going to make a difference and turn this one around. And what I will say, for all the challenges that I'm going to mention today, these are all have been or will be given a deep dive at our internal office performance and delivery board. So I'm going to move on to outcome 2, great neighbourhoods that people are happy to call home. Last time we talked about some measures that had seen improvement around tenant satisfaction, and there was an ask from the committee to how do we stand comparatively. So that's been included this time. In terms of tenant satisfaction in 23-24, total overall satisfaction housing service, we're looking at being 61.6%, compared to the higher housemark quartile of 76%. But there's been significant improvement over the last year, and we're hoping to post an annual uplift on that measure. Similarly, tenant satisfaction, percentage of those satisfied with their home is well maintained. There's been a significant increase in performance. So Sheffield sat at 64.5 comparatively. Recent performance, we've been as high as 73% and over 70%. So we hope to post a much higher comparative position in the future. Again, these were included at members' request to kind of show a comparative view of those measures. Moving on to outcome 3, which focuses on mainly our adult social care services. The strengths we picked up last time on percentage of adult social care providers rated good or outstanding continue to perform well. So we've up 1% from quarter 2 and exceeding target by 6% in quarter 3. The median number of days to complete a Care Act assessment has been off target for some time, but has just recently in quarter 3 very quickly come back into its performance target range and is showing a trajectory to continue to improve. And likewise, the number of days to put support in place has been performing well for a long period of time. Both these measures are really important in how we deliver long-term care. The first one initially being that we promptly assess people and we assess their needs quickly and deal with any safeguarding issues. The second one being that the support is put in place quickly and the needs don't deteriorate further. Challenges in this area. Last time we talked about the number of people awaiting occupational therapy assessment. I'm pleased to say that's still heading in the right direction with an improvement of a reduction of a further 50 waits since quarter 2. And it's on track to achieve its revised target of 400 by hopefully the end of March 2025. Where we have some challenges in this area is the proportion of adults that are receiving an annual review. This performed well up until around about June 2024, where we've seen really a continued decline in that area, being well below target for a number of months. There is an action plan in place that's hoping to address these and have an influence on this position by quarter 1 2025. Again, this has been called into performance and delivery board and we'll keep you updated on movement there. Outcome 4, a creative and prosperous city full of culture, learning and innovation. This is a real good news story. One of the key measures from the Office of National Statistics through their annual survey of hours and earnings, the median gross wages by total and gender are seen an increase in Sheffield from the data we've just received for 2024. Full-time wage for women increased by 15% and 8% for men. From a comparative position, we've moved ahead of both Liverpool and Leeds in 2024. Finally, in terms of the outcome measures, a city on the move, our measures around the average concentrations of nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter 10. In layperson's terms, that's our air quality measures, have both seen a significant reduction in the latest data that's posted. This continues to show that our kind of clean air strategy action plan is working, and there's further work to sustain these measures and keep them on the trajectory that they're currently on. Finally, we'll look at our corporate health. So the strength that we've got is our number of new complaints as they stand this year. If we continue on the trajectory that we're currently on, are going to be lower than they were in the previous 2 financial years. However, a challenge that we've got is our response to those complaints and the targets that the Ombudsman imposes on us around average days to respond to complaints at stage 1 or stage 2 within either 10 or 20 working days. Both of those have been out of sync for some time now, so there's a piece of work going on there to try and address that, particularly through changes to our customer relationship management system, improving awareness of officers of the Ombudsman guidance and some internal process changes, which we hope to see a change to that in quarter 4, 24-25 when we next report. And then finally, the proportion of FOIs responded to within timescale in Q3. Performance is down by 8% in Q3 and does remain consistent below target. Again, there's a piece of work internally to look at a number of initiatives that have been going on for some time now around changes to software, processes and ways of working. That again, we're hoping to see a turnaround within the next 2 quarters on this measure. So that is my strengths and challenges presentation. I'll stop there and answer any questions.
Thank you very much, James. Is there any questions or comments? Councillor Chapman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm going back to page 46, the EHCP plans, obviously still low and lots of plans not being done. Do we know, it said that 60% of requests for these are done by parents? Do we know how many of these actually get passed?
How many actually transfer through?
Yeah, percentage-wise.
I do. I don't have it off the top of my head. I think it's relatively high, a relatively high number. Just to get it, because this just figure does move with the different tribunal outcomes. So we can come back to committee with an exact figure, but it's a relatively high number that converts. Yeah.
Councillor Levery.
Thanks, Chair. A few questions, James. Could you explain page 49 to me? Because it talks about house smart peer groups, and the numbers vary between quartile 1 and quartile 3, so a significant drop. So what does that mean in terms of, can you give me an explanation?
Yeah, of course. So HouseMart, the regulator, take all the authorities in the country. They look at it's relative to performance, and they'll put this into quartiles. So quartile 1 will be the top operating group, quartile 2 second, and then quartile 4 the fourth operating group. So it's how they split this really into kind of different groupings across the piece. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Yeah, so we're sort of just more or less the line with quartile 3?
Yeah.
All right, okay, thank you. My next one was on page 89. So it shows the number of people on the families on the housing register. Looks like it's below 18,000. Now, the last time I met housing officers, which was recently, it was 25,000. Can you just clarify that number, please?
Just bear with me, Councillor. Yeah, so this is the number we get from housing. So that is the latest figure we received this quarter from housing services. So if there's any difference to that we believe is, I will take that away as a question.
Please, yeah.
But that is looking at this data, we work really closely with housing services, and they provide those figures to us on a quarterly basis. Whether there's been some change in that time around how they measure that data is a different stuff, but that should be covered. That should have been covered in the notes.
Yeah, if you could clarify, please. And finally, page 91 and 92. So this is voids.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're currently on time set to re-elect properties at 109 days, and the target's 49. So, have we got a time scale for achieving that target? Similarly, on the following page, where we're talking about the time to bring the voids back into fit to let from 109 to 21 days, which is a huge step. So these two, you know, if you're setting targets, you usually want to make sure they're achievable. So can we have some timescales set on what it will be to achieve what they're going to do?
Do you think there as well, Councillor, there's a potential to look at reviewing that target as well as we go into next year to see if it is achievable as well? So I'll take that away with service.
Thank you.
Councillor Hurst.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that, James. My question isn't quite as specific as the ones that have come through already. And I think we've discussed this in this committee before. I think it's a reflection on the questions that we've just heard about what the story is behind the figures and the monitoring information, because the figures and the monitoring information is only half the story, isn't it? I've heard you mention action plans, I've heard you mention performance clinics and things like that. And I mean, I was looking at, I wrote a series of questions down, it started to become an essay, but looking at needs, the children not in education or training, On page 36 is one set of figures, and then on 43 and 44, the attendance at school is going up, but we're failing all but the children that are care leavers, it seems, on the targets. And one would hope that if you can't learn if you're not in school, and you can't attain if you're not in school, that those align. But as elected members, I'm sure the committees themselves know what's happening, but we're, as the Finance Committee, we're expected to note the progress and note the ongoing attainment. And if we don't have an idea of the story behind it, or we can't have a joint session with the committees and do a deep dive into one or other of the heads of performance monitoring over, say, a 12-month period or whatever, how do we know that overall the direction of travel is good, and that we've got officers in place that are supported with the resources that they need to turn it around? So it basically is, have we got anywhere with the joint sessions and joint briefings to do a deep dive, I think.
Okay. Recognise, given this council the size we are, we've got a wide range of metrics, but I do agree, the numbers tell you one story. I think on the needs, the officers there have done a decent job of providing a commentary there on, but not being able to get under the skin of it and understand what this actually means. So we talked about school attendance there. The needs piece is something very different about where you're progressing into adulthood. And there's a number of factors at play that you can see from the commentary there, that we're very good as a city at talking to our young people, having timely conversations with them. But the issue a lot of the time there is around provision that we provide for them. We've tried to pull that out, but I imagine that one and some others would really benefit from a deep dive across the different committees. Recognise that this committee has to look across a wide range of metrics, education. We've touched on education, housing, and transport and various other metrics today. So I think that would be really welcomed if we could facilitate some of those sessions through working groups, not just on the work we've done so far and what the metrics are going to be or are, but what the metrics mean, and potentially deep dive into some particular topic areas. I think NEETs is a great example, because getting that right for our young people has a real impact on this, not just on the young people, but also on our kind of macroeconomic outlook.
Can I just add to that as well? So Diane, I absolutely agree with your comments, but we have discussed that, further briefings with heads and directors, just to kind of get a bit more understanding around the figures that we see, because today that's a lot of information for us to kind of absorb and kind of understand. There has been a bit of a working group also that's been happening with James, that's been really useful, where we've been kind of feeding in to make sure that the overall performance outcomes are comprehensive and they are consistent, and members have kind of had to request further detailed outcomes, just so that when we are reading these reports, it's easier for us to understand and we know exactly what direction they're going into. But totally agree in terms of having further deep dive sessions with directors and heads of services. That's something that James is aware of, and we have said that for NEETs, for example. I think even for the EHCP plans, we do need to have a bit more information about what's happening. Okay, Councillor Lee and then Councillor Sang.
Yeah, my question or comments were on a similar theme, really. We'd say that absence is improving, but that's an average across the city. It's not about particular areas, and my guess is it's not improving in some areas as fast as it might be quite good anyway in other areas of the city. So that was really, I guess, if you can confirm that, that'd be fine. And the other question is similar to what Diane was talking about needs and how important that is, and how achievement is absolutely vital. If we've got an economic development plan for the city, it's not going to, in the longer term, it's going to fail if we haven't got those young people, particularly boys, into education or training. And I was reading over the weekend in one of the newspapers about a generation of lost boys, and it was mentioned on the news this morning about a generation of lost boys, and that doesn't bode well. And I think, you know, obviously if there's a lot of work going on, Councillor Naz, that's really good, but it would really, really good to understand that, because it's, you know, as corporate parents we are, it is our concern, and we should understand what's going on. I think we can guess what might be going on, but we don't know all the details. So any information that could be forthcoming, that would be really good.
I think it links to the point we talked about around the equalities framework piece and incorporating some of those elements into this. I think in year one, we focused on the main measure, the primary measure, and you're quite right, attendance overall is improving, but there's certain demographic groups that are impacted, particularly those children that are on free school meals and on lower incomes. And then you point around needs, having a view on that by gender might be something that we want to include as well. So that was really, that first recommendation would allow that to happen. I think as a committee we need to be careful that we can't split everything by every particular perspective, but I imagine there will be some key things that we want to focus on, particularly of those that are at the most disadvantage. I've seen other authorities that have had a performance framework like this in place for quite some time, and they've then chosen to set the targets against some of those demographic groups, rather than having it at maybe a citywide level. In addition to that, I've seen it where they've had attendance targets against a particular demographic group, and really strove to have action plans to see that group move in line with the wider population.
Thank you, and I think again, Mary's highlighted some really important outcomes that we do, and we've all kind of discussed them already in terms of protected characteristics, kind of breaking down the figures even more, and kind of really thinking about the communities, particularly disadvantaged areas, and how that impacts young people in them areas. Councillor Sangha?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the report, and I'm glad that we're back to the world of performance and figures, because I think unless you measure something, you can't have you don't know where you are against other authorities, and it's harder to have an action plan for improvement. So I think my first comment would be very much from what I've just heard in terms of exclusions and absenteeism are clearly a problem that if we were sitting here 10, 15, 20 years ago, these figures were appalling. And we have not, as a city, got back to where we were pre-COVID. We're not the only authority, but it's useful to know where we are on that journey and who we're comparing ourselves against. That would be my point on that. I think my particular question would be to pick up Councillor Chapman's question in terms of where we were in terms of EHCs, where clearly, if you go back a year, we were processing things within 20 weeks, and now in December we were down below 10%. Well, you know, if we're on a national figure of 60 to 65%, and we're at 48%, that's not a good place to be. But if in December we were at 10%, that's a very bad place to be. So, me as a substitute member, what confidence can I have that the action plan will get us back to where we were, but also that we can move from 48% to the target we've now set ourselves at 55%, and then the regional target of 60%. Where am I? How do I get confidence from this report?
Okay. So action plan was written with Pat Buttrell, who's the Director for Education and Skills. He's taking now a lead on delivering that plan. I think in terms of this committee, and the reason why we've done the figures like we have done, I think showing just the comparator from last year doesn't give you what you need to do. So that's why we've done it on a month by month basis. So by the time we've come back to you in quarter 4, we're going to have the figures for January, February and March, potentially even April at that point, where hopefully we'll have seen things move. As I've said as well, this is going to be a deep dive piece of work done by the Internal Officer Performance and Delivery Board, where we'll look at the work that's been done and do a deep dive and ask them to come back probably on a monthly basis to see what actions have been taken. So something is happening in between at officer level, and we've got to report back to yourselves that action plan is on track.
Thank you, Chair. And so will the target remain 55%? I'm just aware that you've said that the statistical neighbour target is 60%, its current performance is 60%, the Yorkshire and Humber target is 61.5. I've seen in the national press concerns that authorities are 60 to 70%, and the government's thinking about changing it because of that. And this is an area of focus for all of us. From concerned parents are approaching all of us about the length of time it takes. Clearly, Sheffield's had a problem in the last year. We're going to get back to where we were. Where's the evidence that we need as members to say that the authority has this in hand and that we're going to deliver quicker examinations of these plans and quicker decisions on EHC plans?
Yeah, so in terms of that target, when we go into our review for end of this first year of performance, I think all these targets we need reviewing. That target was set, basically triangulated between our past performance, where we were comparatively, and where we're performing at the time. As you said, that was higher at the time, so that may need to be recalibrated, I think. I think as well, there's probably quite a few changes, you mentioned they're coming nationally on this one as well. And we need to watch those, I think, carefully, because it may well change this measure significantly, or it may be measured differently. But I think, as we stand today, the intention is to follow through on that action plan, to keep a close eye on it in the next few months and hopefully see it turn around.
Okay, thank you. Just in terms of 78 and 79, it's this issue about what is the right statistical neighbour, because often with child protection plans, we've had a different set of statistical neighbours to the core cities, because we've generally performed quite well on this, and therefore some of the core cities have been particularly badly performing. So when we've worked with Ofsted and the Department for Education in the past, we've had a set of statistical neighbours of authorities that have a similar demographic makeup to Sheffield, rather than going for core cities. So here it clearly looks as if we're doing very well, but why are we comparing ourselves with authorities which we know are poorly performing, whereas say in the past we've compared ourselves with people we think are a more challenging target?
So I think with the comparators, there's a real choice available in what we compare ourselves to. So this one, we've looked at core cities. When we look at this particular measure at the Children and Families Committee, we look at it via core cities, via statistical neighbours, and via England overall. The reason we're not doing it here just because of the visual clutter that could come from it. What we can do, we can, as much as we've done here, and including kind of our relative position rather than including core cities, whichever comparison we think are important for these different measures, we can build those in. It might be that it's a different comparator for each one as we go through and as we mature this over the years. What I will say on this one as well, because this can be done across England, there are small authorities that perform particularly well because they're very small. So, but really, we can take our choice in what comparators we want to choose for this one, and it may be that we settle on something different because we are well performing in this area, but we might want to put ourselves against those that are really high performing to make sure that we're continually exceeding.
I understand. Mr. Chair was saying is 15 years ago we were comparing ourselves with some statistical neighbours rather than core cities. I think that's what we need to continue to challenge ourselves, even on the things we're doing well. So thank you, Chair.
That's a good point. I didn't realise that's how they were measured in the past. Councillor Dodd.
Thank you. And thank you, James, for this work, in particular for taking on the feedback from previous meetings. It's really great to see. I wanted to start with some good news, that the median wages have gone up both for men and particularly for women, and indeed has taken quite a jump on previous years, meaning that people in Sheffield are now earning more than in Liverpool, Leeds or Manchester, which feels like a really important milestone for us, both because it's a sign that there are more good jobs with decent pay, and that we're narrowing the gap between what men earn and what women earn across the city, which feels like a fantastic sign of the economic success that we're having as a city, but also that that's being felt by the median earner in the city as a really important sign of that being kind of broadly felt by lots of residents. So that seems like really positive news to have come out of this quarter's data. And indeed that for all that there are challenges, that attendance and attainment is also going up, suggests that more of our children in Sheffield will be able to benefit from those good jobs in the future, which is also great. I wanted to pick up on the theme of EHCPs. No, actually, before I move on the wages question, it would be really interesting, I suspect that you don't have the answer now, but it would be really interesting to know whether the team have a sense of what's driving that, whether there are particular industries, particular job sectors that have contributed to that raise. I appreciate we probably don't get that granularity from ONS, but if colleagues have got a sense for what might be behind that, that would be helpful. If you're able to answer that, then I'll run through the others.
I can't answer it fully, but it's certainly a question we've asked internally ourselves. I think that there's a range of things going on in the city that are really positive, that are contributing towards that. Basically, we've got things like the Advanced Manufacturing Park. We've got an influx of quite recent history of government departments into the city as well, which we think may have kind of bumped up that median wage. And again, as well, we've got those factors like improving education and attainment statistics that potentially impact that as well.
Great, thank you. On the EHCP timing, colleagues have covered most of the kind of forward-looking bit, but I was just wondering, we're obviously looking today at 6 months of kind of lower than trend statistics, and so I was wondering if you could talk us through kind of when this new plan came into place and the kind of work that's been going on behind the scenes to make sure that we're in a position now to hopefully see an uptick in that.
Yeah, so the work with service has been ongoing for some time. I think what's been mentioned is there are some factors that are difficult to control within that. Primarily that's been around recruitment of educational psychologists. So what's in the plan is looking at some alternatives around how they can use what they've got more effectively to start to get through the plans in a quicker way. I think obviously that level of performance was not expected, so I think the plan they've put in place, the update you see there is most recent and has the most kind of buy-in from senior directors in the children's services and a commitment to use, they've said in the 8 weeks to try and turn this around. We might not see the data immediately in 8 weeks, but we should see on the ground changes starting to happen because there is a grip from leaders within the service on wanting to see this move.
Great, thank you. And then one last question, which was on page 104, so delving into the details, and it may be one for you to take away with colleagues because I appreciate it wasn't in your summary pack. But there was reference in the metric around antisocial behaviour that it's gone down in general across the city, which is great to see, but that there was recognition that there probably was geographic variation within that, but it wasn't spelled out where and what that might look like. And of course that prick might interest us to what is that looking like? Where are we seeing perhaps faster or faster falls, or in fact small-scale rises that might be different across different geographies? So if we were able to get that for the next meeting, that would be really helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, that's absolutely no problem. We'll look at that as a geographic breakdown for next time.
Thank you. Councillor Livery.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, James. I've talked in other places like governance about exec summaries. I think this is a classic example if we're going to get a quarterly report to have on top of it an exec summary which will tell us what's new, what's changed, and what are the key measures that are indicating one way or the other that we should take notice of. Thank you.
No, that's a really good point, because some of these measures we've just looked at GCSE results won't move for another year now. So I think when we come to do the review, I think we're learning all the time, aren't we, about how we do this and how we navigate what is a wealth of information, but we need to do it in a way that allows us to bring the important things up to yourselves. So I think that's a really good point. Thank you.
Councillor Chapman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah. Can we just go to page 130 on page 132, job density, where we come out at 0.84, Sheffield next to the bottom, and page 132, business density, measures of people actually employed and in work, and we're at the bottom. And it just looks at this, no density of jobs, lowest number of business enterprises. It just looks as though there's no growth in Sheffield at all. no growth in jobs market anyway.
Yes, I think this is a case of, in terms of job density per resident, it's improved slowly, but comparatively we do say it differently. Business density per 10,000 people has gone up and it's just dropped off slightly. These are very longitudinal figures. So the last data we get for these was 2022 for job density and 2023. In this area, it's difficult to find figures that are more frequent. I think when we come to do a review, we may want to consider, do we want to look at different measures or have these in the background because they move over such a longer time frame. But comparatively, yeah, that's currently where we sit. Again, this is something that we include for information. We have some influence over it, but we're playing a wider piece really in terms of these wider macroeconomic measures. I think the piece around the medium wages is an example of a good measure there, where the Office of National Statistics kind of backing us up on that one and providing it on a relatively regular basis. So I think for these two, to answer your question, yes, the figures are where they say we are from a comparative perspective. There may be a question when we come to do the review that we need to choose different measures in this area to show maybe closer to the time period economic changes on the ground.
So it's better paid jobs, but or more better quality rather than the number of.
Yeah, I think yeah, we may need to do a piece maybe to take those measures in concert, because this is the density, not the quality of, it's the number of, rather than, or the density of jobs, but it doesn't delineate between them being what level or pay band they are. There's some hopeful news from the median wage increase that they are towards that higher end, but yeah, taken as it is, potentially I would say when we next report on this that we do a bit of a deeper dive, and when this one is next updated, and to the point that we said next point from Councillor Levery is that when this is updated for 2024 and 2025 respectively, we'll flag on there, here's the new measure, and we can take some time maybe to dive into the density for businesses, the density for jobs, and other adjacent measures, and try and tell a bit of a story around those, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Right, and the next one is on page 153, which is number of homes growing and what we've bought. And for 24-25, we seem to be quite low. We've not acquired many council houses at all, compared to the number of capital approvals we've made as we've been going through the year. We've approved quite a lot of spending on council properties, but there's not that many, especially in quarter one, not many properties bought.
I agree. Would you like me to go away and get a narrative from service on that one?
Yeah, we'd find out what.
Yeah, let's dig under the
Yeah.
numbers and see why is that's the case, or if it's a potential time lag. Yeah.
Thank you very much, James. There isn't any further questions or comments. I'd just like to also mention on page 54, outcome 4, around the outcome measures on the median weekly wages. The fact that women's wages grew at a higher rate than men's could potentially indicate progress in reducing the gender pay gap. Overall, I think this data is really positive. It's a positive indicator of Sheffield's economic prosperity and could attract more investment, business and skilled workers in the city. So I think that's a really good news story. But some really good questions and comments today in regards to this report. And the data in these reports will guide members, officers and community leaders in making evidence-based decisions. It helps allocate resource efficiently and ensures that policy changes are driven by real outcomes rather than assumptions. So thank you for the report. It's really important that we carry on bringing these reports, these outcomes to this committee for us to kind of look into more detail. But I think having deeper dives with other committees is something that would benefit members on this policy committee too. So thank you very much. This report does come with approval, so are we all agreed? Yeah, so that's agreed. Thank you very much, James. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, the final item of the agenda today is on capital approvals for month 10, and this is on page 191 of the agenda pack. And it's Damien Watkinson who will be presenting.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just here to present the approvals for capital spend that have been brought forward in the current approval cycle. I'll do my usual, I'll run through them as swiftly as I can and then take any questions at the end if that's okay. On the transport, regeneration and climate change, we are bringing forward design works at 3 further sites for the 20-mile-an-hour zones that are being rolled out across the city. So that's design works at Longleat, Beaver Hill and Crooks at Lidget Lane. We're also bringing forward design works for 3 accident saving schemes to be delivered at Chesterfield Road, Sicey Avenue and Sheave Street. Under the Transforming Cities Fund, the Housing Zone North scheme had been reporting roughly £1.2 million overspend. The additional funds have been secured from the Combined Authority to deliver the additional drainage works, enhanced surfacing at that project, and so we at a previous meeting accepted that additional grant. This is the approval to put those funds into the capital programme. The city centre bike hub is now open, but there have been some additional costs. The highways works that were recommended to access the site have come in around 50k higher than initially estimated, and there has been an additional 60k for more bike racks and building control works at that property. Under traffic management, we are moving to installing new cameras to enforce moving traffic offences at 3 locations, so that's an additional 171k. And on our asset enhancement programme, where we've got a budget allocated to improve sites prior to being disposed of or developed, we're slipping 345k into next financial year. And it's also to note that part of that is a grant that we've received in relation to Ardmore Street, and we're going to be passporting that grant onto the housing association that are purchasing that site from us, so they're going to deliver the remediation works under the Brownfield Housing Fund funding that we've received. Community Parks and Leisure, at Firth Park, consultations complete, and we're now moving to tendering for a new play area for older children. And some additional and replacement works for the younger children's sites. That's based on feedback that the friends of that park wanted to see a more specific age range appropriate provision and have those separated. We're just reprofiling some grant payments to Sheffield Rotherham Wildlife Trust on the Species Survival Grant, and also noting that that will be partly now funded by the National Power Grid contribution that we've secured for that programme. Under housing, we're undertaking feasibility work at Edward Street Flats to look at renewing the communal areas, improve security and fire safety. Also on our council housing stock, we are looking to replace the lift auto dialers. This is to do with the switch over from analogue to digital phone lines, and so the emergency call buttons in all lifts need to be upgraded to digital. Also, we are looking to acquire 6 4-bed homes at Thorncliffe View for shared ownership, so for inclusion in our affordable housing stock. Heating breakdowns, so we're putting in the next 5 years of the rolling programme of replacements of heating systems when they fail or come to end of life. So that's a roughly £6 million over the next 5 years being allocated from the HRA for that. Also, we've got so the HRA has some sundry properties, which are properties that have been acquired or are non-standard properties. 14 of those are having fire safety works undertaken, approximately £2.2 million to make those compliant with current regulations. Under our district heating systems, while there is a larger strategic plan being developed around the management of that and the upgrade of it, there are some additional emergency works that need to be undertaken at Totley Brook and Walling Close. So there's approximately 100k recommended to go forward there to do replacement works to ensure those systems continue to function correctly. Infield Lane, we've purchased some apartments there and there's just an additional 58k required to meet some planning conditions and some additional fire risk assessment works to have those fully included in our affordable housing stock. Moving on to education, children and families, we're just bringing forward to the delivery stage the Mundella and Norton primary schools eco works. So that will be to deliver lighting, LED lighting and solar PV at Mundella and solar PV at Norton, where they've already got the LED lighting. Bent Screen Special School has seen an increase in numbers and an increase in complexity of need. So we are funding approximately 400k of reconfiguration works there to allow them to continue to deliver that level of support to our SEND pupils. We've seen savings on a couple of schemes under the condition programme at schools. So that's at Bayton with their roofing programme, at Halfway with their roofing programme and window replacements, and at Coit and Waterthorpe schools, we've seen some savings on their FRA works. Those funds will be returned back into the education maintenance pot to address the ongoing backlog that we have on the school's estate, which is partly the reason why we have also on here an increase of 150k in our primary maintenance capital emergency works. We're seeing an increasing call on this as the backlog maintenance continues to be addressed, but extends because we don't really receive significant funding from central government to meet all the pressures in that area. So we're having to increase the emergency pot we have, where we need to act quickly at short notice. Under strategy and resources, I referred to the auto dialers that needed in the lifts for our HRA stock. It's exactly the same issue on our own corporate estate. So these two projects will work in tandem, and there'll be a joint procurement exercise to ensure we get best value there. We have our closed churchyard boundary walls scheme. That's requiring another increase for additional works that have been identified on a number of sites, and that's around 100k going forward. In terms of economic development and skills, we've just got a vyment between a couple of schemes. That's for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. So the vyment between these two schemes is just to make sure we can maximise the amount of funding that we claim from the combined authority in order to be able to deliver those schemes that are relating to grants for low carbon activity in the city. In terms of grants that we are looking to accept this month, there has been 1.1 million allocated from the Environment Agency for phase 2 of the Upper Don Valley Flood Scheme. This is to continue development work on the design of that scheme. Initially funded from our own corporate infrastructure levy, this is match funding that's coming in from the EA towards the development of that scheme. we've been offered £3 million of gain share funding towards the Lears Yard scheme, which has completed, but it's going to be used to reduce the borrowing that the council needs to incur on that scheme to make it more viable in terms of the general fund overall. Under housing, we've secured 4 million for Coker Bottoms and 8 million for our Newstead general needs development, which are, again, affordable housing developments. So in terms of Coker Bottoms, we're acquiring properties from Sheffield Housing Company, and the Newstead general needs, we are the developer and are undertaking those. So we've secured 12 million in total across those two schemes. For the grant that we are to be issuing, this is what I referred to earlier on our asset enhancement project, where we're passporting on to Housing Authority to deliver the remediation of the site at Ardmore Street, which that association is then going to subsequently develop, and that's 690k. And then there's just one other for acceptance in the closed appendix.
Thank you very much, Damien. Councillor Lee.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. It seems like there's good news on housing development in the city, and particularly Ardmore Street, which is in Darnall. Councillor Naz and I will know it's a bit of a blighted area at the moment, and it's sort of at the end of Sherland Lane, which then the next bit is the bridge leading to the EIS. So I think the fact that we're building houses there will be a really boon to that particular part of Darnall. So revive it and liven it up, and so really pleased about that.
Okay, so there isn't any. Oh, Councillor Dodd.
Thanks. Continuing the same theme that Mary just raised, it's brilliant to see that there's going to be an increase in council housing across the city, and particularly obviously pleased to see that we're going to get 47 new council houses in Manor Castle in the Coker Bottoms area. It's brilliant to see that the funding that's been made available nationally is being able to increase the amount of homes that we can make available for people in the city. So great to be able to accept that today. I also wanted to just ask about on page 200, the proposals coming through for Chesterfield Road, and obviously colleagues in Graves Park have been working quite closely with planning on the recent planning applications that have gone in for this area, and I just wondered, and I appreciate this is a feasibility study, but I just wanted to check that it's kind of aligned with the feedback that's been shared by residents in that area about the priorities for them for this road and the surrounding junctions. Thanks.
Yeah, I can mention that to colleagues in transport, but I think if it's there's a City Region Sustainable Transport programme for that corridor, I think, so it's probably the two, it'll be the same service that's working on both schemes, but I will double check that they're aligning them, but I should imagine that won't be an issue.
Councillor Hurst.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for that, Damien. First of all, a quick comment. Congratulations to Education, Children and Families for doing good financial planning and bringing things in under budget. Perhaps TRC could take a lesson from their book, since we're asking us again for yet more monies. Can I ask a question related to the traffic cameras that we're being asked to fund? What will that additional income be used for? Where will it go? What will it be used for? Because, you know, we know there's shed loads of money coming in from the climate, from the my brain's frozen, I'm sorry.
CAS.
From CAS. Thank you, Glynis. But it's just been held in a pot to pay for when the CAS actually has to be dismantled. So what will this be used for? And on page 207, could I ask a question about the process? We're being asked for monies to bring flats up to standard before we can let them. What's the inspection process when we're actually considering the purchase of properties? Don't we have a list of things that they would need to satisfy conditions and requirements that those properties will need to satisfy so that we could let them. And wouldn't we want to amend our offer accordingly if we've got X amount of pounds left to spend and we know that it comes in, it's going to bring us over budget? So what is the process we go through? Thank you.
In terms of the traffic management, there are rules governing what enforcement income can be used for. So I know, like for instance, the parking income needs to be used for, you know, it's got to be used for improvement on the roads. It's ring fence. In terms of this, for moving traffic offences, this is the first time that we've, as Sheffield, it's new powers, so it's not something that we've done before. So I would have to just double check with the service if it's the same regulations that govern parking income that governs this. So I can check that for you. And if you're referring in Field Lane, where there's been the additional cost, I can't speak to the detail of it, but it would be, it's usually offers are made, in terms of these particular flats, I'd have to check what stage they were at when we made the offer, whether they were complete then at that stage or not, and what might have changed in the intervening period. So I will try and find out a little bit more about why it's a relatively small increase in terms of the overall budget, but I understand your point in that, you know, why we're meeting those extra costs now. So I'll find out for you.
Thank you very much, Damien. There isn't any further questions or comments. This report does contain recommendations for approval. Are we all agreed? Yes, that's all agreed. Thank you very much. That's the end of today's meeting. The next meeting is on 14th of April 2024 at 2 p.m.